What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about Japan's government. Because, to be honest, most of us Americans have absolutely no idea what kind of government Japan has. So today, I'm very interested in finally learning about the Japanese government and how it works. So, with that being said, let's take a look.
Despite Japan's significance in the world, though, many don't know how the powerhouse of Asia operates.
Yeah.
The first thing that pops into an outsider's head is probably the emperor, but the monarch doesn't have the power it once did. In fact, Japan is one of the most democratic political systems in the world.
Really? Okay, this is, yes, I absolutely agree with this. For most of us Americans, when we think of Japan, we think of like an emperor. I don't really know that much about what the emperor actually does in Japan or what his role is, but it's totally true. If you asked me about Japan's government, I would be like, I don't know. I think there's an emperor. Maybe they make the decisions, but apparently that's not true. Apparently, Japan has sort of a normal democratic government. Okay.
The power it once did. In fact, Japan is one of the most democratic political systems in the world.
Okay.
To understand how Japan got to where it is today, one needs to go back to before the end of World War II. Prior to Japan's defeat at the hands of the United States and its allies, the country was ruled by a totalitarian government. The Meiji Constitution, which was named
So, before World War II, Japan was ruled by a totalitarian government? Like a dictatorship or something? What was Japan like before World War II? I've never heard this before. That sounds very interesting.
after one of Japan's most important emperors, was the supreme law of the land. Unlike the United States, where a country's right to govern or sovereignty comes from the people, Japan's sovereignty came from the emperor. There was a parliament called
So back in history, in the old days, it was the emperor who was in charge of everything. So, okay. So I I thought that was like what it was like now, I guess. I had the wrong idea of the emperor in Japan in the modern day. That's kind of what it was like a long time ago, though. It was like that. The emperor was the ruler, I guess.
the Diet, which was made up of elected officials and nobles, but they had little to no power. The real power was concentrated in the emperor's cabinet, which was appointed and accountable to him. During wartime, the military tended to dominate the emperor's cabinet. The emperor essentially had no real checks on his power, and Japanese society at the time revered him as a god.
Wow, Japanese thought the emperor was actually a god. A god. Wow. We've never really had an emperor or a king here in America, so it's difficult for me to relate to all this, but it's very interesting to me. And apparently the military was very, very powerful in Japan as well, and the military actually had a lot of say in the government too.
The Constitution listed responsibilities the people had to the emperor and the country, rather than rights for themselves.
Wow.
The Allies planned to destroy this form of government, though. Before the end of the war, the Allies issued the Potsdam Declaration, which was essentially an order for Japan to surrender and start to demilitarize the country and lead it towards democracy. The declaration would be an outline for the Allies and their plans in the land of the rising sun. The United States would be the primary force in Japan during their occupation and sought to rebuild the country.
So, America, really? I didn't know this. I'm American, but we really don't learn much about Japanese history here in America. I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I did not know that America wanted to play a big role in really changing Japan and totally changing Japan's government. Now, what do Japanese people think of America and the role that we played in changing Japan, basically? Are you happy that happened. Now that we are where we are right now, um, would Japanese people say it was a good thing, or I'm curious about that.
Well, Douglas MacArthur would be chosen to be the supreme commander of Allied powers in Japan, which
Okay.
wanted to make the nation a genuine Western democracy. At first, Japanese bureaucrats would be tasked to create a more liberal constitution for the nation, but the emperor
Okay.
and other officials were reluctant to amend it. Their draft had minimal changes, which MacArthur would outright deny. The general would then tell his own staff to create a constitution for the nation before the deadline, which was less than a week. The new constitution was primarily written by Americans, with a little input from Japanese scholars. But
Whoa. So America wanted Japan to make a new constitution after World War II. And basically, America decided to write the Japanese constitution ourselves? America made Japan's constitution? Is that correct?
overall, the Constitution is American made. The American designed document would be adopted by the Japanese government with only minor changes to it.
Wow.
Japanese society would be completely altered by the creation of this new government.
Yeah, I mean, this is incredible to me. I had no idea how much influence America had over modern day Japan. Like, we literally helped to write the Japanese Constitution, and it changed Japanese society. That's what I mean when I ask, what do Japanese people think of all that? It must be very interesting from the Japanese perspective.
Civil rights and freedoms of citizens would be firmly enshrined in the Constitution. One of the most important developments is in Article 9 of Japan's Constitution, which renounced the country's right to wage war, meaning that the nation would only keep an army for self-defense. The post-war
Japan's constitution says that Japan can never wage war. Ever? What? Wow.
Constitution is considered one of the most liberal documents in the world and is still being used to this day. It would establish Japan's government as a centralized state made of 47 prefectures, which essentially work as states. Each prefecture
I didn't know about this. Japan is split up into prefectures? Prefectures. 47. Oh my gosh, there's so many. That really is like how America has 50 states, huh?
Each prefecture has its own governor and legislature, which run the many local governments in the area. The government
Okay.
isn't federal like the United States, though. The national government Japan has complete supremacy over all the regional governments. That's not all the Constitution changed, though. Japan's judiciary was completely revamped.
So in Japan, you have 47 prefectures. All of the prefectures have governors that rule them or govern them. But there's also a national government, a federal government, that controls all of Japan and basically has the final say. I think I understand. Okay.
Judges were given quite a lot of independence to prevent political interference, and 5 different levels of courts were created. The
Wow.
summary court is the lowest and usually handles civil cases and minor criminal offenses. Family courts primarily handle domestic disputes and small cases.
Okay, so right now we're learning about the judicial branch of the Japanese government, like courts and judges. Okay, this is kind of similar to how it works in America, honestly, all the courts and stuff.
While district courts take appeals from lower courts and handle the felony cases. High courts take the appeals from the district, family, and summary courts, while the
Okay.
Supreme Court is the highest in Japan and is
Yeah.
the final court of appeal. They also have the power of judicial review, which means they determine if a law is constitutional, and if the law is not, then it's struck down. The
Wow, so Japan has a Supreme Court that makes a lot of decisions. Very similar to America, yeah.
Supreme Court is made of 15 members appointed by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. Judges have to retire at the age of 70 and can be
Okay.
removed by referendum every 10 years. The Chief Justice of the Court is chosen by the Cabinet and appointed by the Emperor. Judges of the inferior courts are appointed by the Cabinet, but only from a list of people chosen by the Supreme Court. After designing the court, the framers made Japan's legislative branch resemble the previous constitutions, but it's given much more power. The parliament was called the National Diet and was made the most powerful branch of government. The Diet is made up of 2 separate chambers. The House of Representatives is the lower chamber of the Diet and made up of 465 elected officials who serve 4-year terms.
Okay, so Japan, this is getting a little complicated. Japan has different branches of government. This branch is the Diet, which has a House of Representatives. Again, very, very similar to America. We also have a House of Representatives. Okay.
289 of the members are elected through a simple majority vote by whatever district they're campaigning in, but the 176 other members are elected by a party list system, which is done by proportional representation. This means that a party will run for office with a list of candidates, and if their party were to get 70% of the votes, then they get 70% of the 176 seats up for election.
Oh, wow.
The House of Representatives is subject to being dissolved by the Prime Minister, but this is offset by their ability to remove the Prime Minister through a vote of no confidence. The upper chamber.
Oh, Japan has a prime minister. Oh, I was wondering about who's in charge of Japan. It's not the emperor. It's not a president. It's a prime minister. Okay, I didn't know that. I think again, most Americans like we have no idea about this stuff. Okay, so that's the House of Representatives. What else?
Is called the House of Councilors, which has 245 members that serve 6-year terms.
The House of Counselors? The House of Counselors. Okay.
73 of the members come from each of the 47 prefectures and are elected through a majority vote in districts where multiple candidates can win a seat. 48
Okay.
members are elected nationally through proportional representation. The House of Councilors can veto or block any law that the House of Representatives passes, but their veto can be overridden if 2/3 of the representatives vote to pass the law. Unlike
So the House of Counselors kind of oversees the House of Representatives. Man, Japan has a lot of representation, a lot of voting, a lot of democratic representation. It's really cool to see. There's a lot of similarities between Japan's government and the American government. I had no idea. But now I know that like America even helped write Japan's constitution. So maybe it makes sense that our governments are so similar.
Unlike the House of Representatives, this chamber cannot be dissolved by the Prime Minister. Both chambers have the power to elect the Prime Minister from an official within the Diet, but if they don't agree within a certain time limit, then the candidate elected by the House of Representatives is chosen. While
Wait a minute. The Japan's prime minister is chosen by the House of Representatives? Is that right?
both chambers have the power to elect the Prime Minister from an official within the Diet, but if they don't agree within a certain time limit, then the candidate elected by the House of Representatives is chosen.
The House of Ministers and the House of Representatives, they vote on who the prime minister is. They choose. That's different. In America, we sort of I don't America has a very strange voting system where basically the states all vote on who they want to be president. I don't know. It's all kind of achieves the same thing in the end. There's a lot of representatives of the people. It's a very sounds very democratic in Japan, so that's good. That's great.
While the Constitution may have made the legislative branch more powerful, that doesn't mean the executive branch is powerless. The first major change that the Constitution made to the executive branch was taking power away from the emperor. Japan's imperial majesty has become simply a symbol of the Japanese state, rather than a figure with legitimate political authority.
Oh wow. So Japan's emperor, is there still an emperor? There's an emperor of Japan, but he's not like a king or an emperor or a god. He's more of a symbol, a representative of Japan. All his power has been taken away. Okay, I didn't know that.
Emperor is meant to unite the Japanese people and perform ceremonial tasks, such as rubber stamping appointments made by the cabinet or national diet. The real power is held in the hands of the prime minister and the cabinet. Since the House of Representatives has the most power in choosing the prime minister, the leader of the majority party in the House tends to be chosen for the role.
Oh, okay. So Japan has political parties, just like America. Japan has political parties, and whatever political party is the biggest, they're going to vote the prime minister. They're going to have the majority. Okay, okay. This is a bit different to American government now that I've learned more. But I think I understand.
Cabinet is made up of heads of government ministries who are appointed by the Prime Minister. It is required, though, that the majority of the cabinet be from Parliament. The Prime Minister and his cabinet handle the daily affairs of the government by...
So the Prime Minister is the most powerful position in Japan's government, and he has a cabinet, a group of people that he selects to advise him and help him. In America, our president has a cabinet as well.
Implementing laws that are passed, and they can also present bills to the Diet so they can eventually become laws. Each brand of government shows that it was designed with extreme care to embrace Japanese culture while also ensuring democratic rule. The post-war constitution of Japan has stood the test of time, but it's not without its critics. Corruption is a problem in the country, and while there have been reforms, they've had minimal effects at best. Many politicians are still caught in corruption scandals involving campaign finance from private corporations.
Okay, so corruption, money and corruption is such a big problem in American government. I'm not surprised that Japan also has trouble with corruption, and anywhere in the world where you have power, there's going to be people who are corrupt. So, believe me, we have this problem here as well.
The Japanese party system is rife with problems as well. Despite the Liberal Democratic Party being in power for the majority of the post-war era, Japan's political leadership tends to be very volatile. The government has been unable to tackle the economic troubles of Japan, which has been stagnant for many years now. Politicians within the country have spoken about reform to the constitution many times, but it has yet to happen. Overall, the constitution has established a well-functioning democracy, but its future is left up in the air. The temporary constitution designed by Americans ended up being the long-term status quo for the Japanese people. And
the American-made constitution, was that supposed to be temporary? That was only supposed to be temporary. So Japan was going to create like an official constitution, but that never really happened. So it's worked well so far, but there's some people who have complaints about it. Okay.
whether or not this is a good thing is still up for debate. But one thing's for certain, the land of the rising sun has a remarkable history of building a successful country, and many still look towards the nation as a model of what their country could achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Japan is really, really admired and respected around the world. A lot of Americans would love to visit Japan. A lot of Americans love Japanese culture. I mean, that's why I'm here learning about it, because I'm absolutely fascinated. There's so much stuff about Japan I don't know about, but I'm really glad today I got to learn about how Japan's government works, because that is such an important thing that I never knew anything about how Japan runs. So this was actually really, really enjoyable, really cool to learn about. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on the Japanese government or anything we saw in this video here. That'd be fun to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Japan and Japanese culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.